Guys, my name is Omoyera Loatsosin. In this video today, I'll be showing you how to draft, cut and stitch this pencil skirt with a front drape. This is a skirt you can wear anywhere. I mean anywhere. The office, the church, the gathering. I said anywhere. It just depends on your creativity and taste. I said taste. And the fabrics you can use is not limited to Ankara or Ankara mean African prints or crepe alone. You can use any kind of fabric depending on what you're really working on. Do you understand? Without further ado, let's jump straight into the tutorial.
The tools and materials you'll be needing for this tutorial is this yellow African print fabric. I have a matching thread for it as well, and I have this black lining for the fabric. I have my chalk, my fabric scissors and my tape measure, and don't forget your rulers as well. I went ahead to cut and fold my fabric in such a way that the width is my hip measurement plus allowance and the length is the length of my skirt minus the band allowance. The fabric beneath is for the back, and you can see it's a bit longer than the one on top because I added 1 inch to it, and the 1 inch is for the zipper allowance. And my fabrics are on fold. The first thing I did, I went ahead to mark half an inch from the top edge of the fabric, and I'm going to go across my mark point like so. This is going to be our waistline, so and this is where all our vertical measurements will be taken from. So now I'm going to mark my hip line from the top line. If you can see, I'm placing 2 inches on that waistline, and the 2 inches is for the band. Now I'm going to take our hip measurement. My hip measurement is 8 inches. Now I'm marking 8 inches. That is my hip line. The next thing I'm going to marking quarter of my waist measurement plus 1 inch on the waistline. That 1 inch is for the dart, and I'm also going to mark quarter of my hip measurement on the hip line. I went ahead to use my hip curve to connect the waistline to the hip line, and if you can do freehand, no problem. That part is slightly curved. So remember the M allowance, I always use 1.5 inch for my M allowance. So I'm going to be marking 1.5 inch from the bottom edge of the fabric like so. Before I went ahead to mark quarter of my hip measurement minus 1 inch, and look at where I'm taking my measurement from. I'm going ahead to fold the bottom edge of the fabric like so, the 1.5 inches. I'm going to pin this part down before going ahead to mark our seam allowance. Make sure you pin down. Now I'm going to add my 1 inch seam allowance to the side seam of the skirt. You can do 2 inches, 1.5, depending on what side seam you want to work with, before going ahead and cut out my skirt pattern. Notch points are very much important because it's going to make your life a whole lot easier when stitching your skirts. And I went ahead to slit the back parts of the skirt like so. Remember, this is our zipper allowance. Now remember that the center front of the waistline is not always straight, so I'm going to move down half an inch from the waistline of the skirt, the front part of the skirt. Move down half an inch and connect it back to the side seam like this. And make sure you add your seam allowance to the top edge of the skirt as well. You can see I've added my seam allowance using the original waistline measurements. You know it's half an inch, yes, as well. So you're going to cut out the part that you don't want for the skirt, because the waistline of your skirt must be slightly curved. You just leave the back part like so. And next I'm going to mark my dart placement. What you need is to mark half of your nipple to nipple measurement from the center front like so, and mark points. And always notch your patterns because it's going to make stitching easy for you. It is very important. Like, it is very important to notch your pattern, because this will guide you when you are stitching your skirts together. So I'm going to notch the side seam as well. That's that, and this is what we have at the end of the day. So I've gone ahead to cut my band as well. My band measures my waist measurement plus 2 inches. My waist measurement plus 2 inches. The next thing you are going to do from this point is to cut your lining. The hem allowance of the lining is half an inch. Remember, half an inch hem allowance. Every other thing is the same for the skirts except for the hem allowance. And these are all our pattern pieces that we need to sew the skirt. And I've gone ahead to cut the lining, and this is our band. I went ahead to iron and interfacing at the wrong side of the band before folding my band. And if you don't know how to stitch the band to the skirt, I'll drop the link in the description box. And this is our lining, as you can see is 1 inch shorter than the hem of the skirt. Remember, we have an half-inch seam allowance. And I went ahead as well to cut a long rectangular fabric that we are going to drape at the side of the skirt. So let's go into the stitching part of the skirt. The first thing you are going to do at this point is to stitch your dart. You fold the dart notches like so, and you take it to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch it down. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to show you what it looks like after stitching. And I've gone ahead to stitch our dart and give it a nice press. This is what the dart is looking like. I did the same thing for the lining. You can see how nice and good the stitches is after pressing it. This is the lining. I did the same thing there. So the next thing you are going to do at this point is to stitch the side seam of the skirt. Place wrong side to wrong side of the skirt and you take it to your machine and you are going to stitch them down. So that's what I'm going to do next. After stitching, I took it to my iron table and I gave it a nice press. Make sure you open the side seam with your finger before you going ahead to press the seam. And this is what you will have after giving your skirt a nice press. It was when I was fitting the skirt, that's when I discovered that you have to add the drape to the side seam before stitching. Do you understand? So before stitching the side seam, just drape your rectangular fabric at the side before doing that. So the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to add our zipper to the back of the skirt. So this is what I'm telling you guys. You measure where you want your drape to start from, then you mark the points. So before you stitch the side seam of the skirt, you are going to drape the rectangular piece to the side like so, like the way I'm doing now. You're going to drape it to the side and make sure that the wrong side is facing the right side of the skirt like this, so that it will be easy for you to drape it over to the other side. The wrong side is facing the front of the skirt and the right side of the draped fabric is facing the back side of the skirt. I hope you understand. After draping, this is how the piece will fall at the side. So I hope you understand. So let's go ahead and fix the zipper to the center back of our skirt. What we have here is an invisible zipper, and make sure you unzip it like 2 or 3 times to be sure that you don't have problem with the zip before fixing it to the back of the skirt. And that's what I'm going to do now. So you just you unzip the zipper and you place the teeth of the zipper on the grease line of the center back. You can see I've already gone ahead to fold and press that part, so just place the teeth on the grease line like so before you take it to your machine and just stitch it down. You do the same thing for both sides of the center back. I've gone ahead to fix our zipper to the back of the skirt, and this is what we have. So now I'm going to introduce our lining. We are going to use this lining to conceal the side seam of the center back. So you unzip the zip and make sure that the right side of the lining is on the right side of the zipper, like this. Right side to right side, like so. You just place it on it like this and you take it to your machine and stitch it down. Once you stitch it this way, all the seam will be concealed inside the lining. And you take it to your machine and you stitch it down, and make sure that you are stitching close to the zipper. So I've gone ahead to do that, and this is what we have concealed that part. Let me turn this inside out so that you can see what I did. As you can see, I've concealed this seam allowance inside the lining, and this is what you have. The next thing you are going to do, you are going to stitch the remaining parts of the center back up to the point where the zipper end, where the lining end on the zipper. You place it like so and you take it to your machine and stitch it up to the point where the lining end on the zipper. That's all. So I'm going ahead to do that, and I gave it a nice press. You can see all our side seam has been concealed in the lining. So the next thing you are going to do, you are going to be stitching the lining to the hem of the skirt. Remember that the fabric is 1.5 inch longer than the lining, and the lining has only 1/2 inch seam allowance. You pick the lining like so, and the fabric, make sure that side seam is matching side seam. You flip it towards the wrong side, and you match side seam to side seam, like the way I'm doing right now. Make sure you're matching the side seam to side seam. Before taking it to your machine and stitch round the skirt like so. Please watch what I'm doing here. I'm stitching the lining to the hem of the skirt. After stitching and giving our skirt a nice press, I went ahead to fix the band to the skirt. You can see how neat we have concealed all the seam allowance inside the skirt. This is what the finished look of the skirt is looking like, and you can style it in so different way. You can either leave it like this or get a brush and you drape it over to the other side and use your pin or brush to pin it down. Watch what I'm going to do next. I'm going to style it in another different way. Watch as I drape it over to the right side, to the left side, and then I'm going to use my brush to pin it down. And now this is what you should have. I hope you learn a few things from this tutorial, and if you do, please make sure that you give this video a thumb up, like and share the video, and feel free to tag a soulmate. If you have any tutorial requests, the comment section is there for you. Just leave a comment there and I will reply you. Have a nice day and bye. Please